You keep entering places that look normal from the outside. A room where you have to perform. A conversation where your peace starts disappearing. A circle that calls your exhaustion loyalty. A memory that pulls you back at night. A comfort zone that feels safe while quietly making you smaller. And because none of it looks like danger, you blame yourself for feeling heavy. You say maybe you're too sensitive, maybe you're overthinking, maybe this is just how life works. But some places do not destroy you with force. They change you slowly. They train you to ignore your own body, your own silence, your own warning signs. Machiavelli understood that not every door is opened by honesty. Some doors are opened by need, loneliness, image, guilt, and control. The question is not where you can go. The question is which places are taking you from yourself. You knew something felt wrong before you had the words for it. Not wrong enough to make you run, not loud enough to call it danger. Just a small tightening in your chest, a strange heaviness after leaving certain people, a quiet confusion after certain conversations. You walked in feeling normal, and somehow walked out questioning yourself. Your mood changed. Your thoughts got messy. Your peace felt disturbed, but because nothing obvious happened, you told yourself you were overthinking. That is how some doors work. They do not open with warning signs. They open with warmth, with attention, with an invitation that makes you feel included. With a room where people smile at you before they slowly study what they can use. And because you were tired of being alone, tired of carrying everything by yourself, tired of feeling invisible, you stepped inside. Not because you were foolish, because you were human. You wanted connection. You wanted a place where you could finally breathe. But some places do not let you breathe. They teach you to adjust. You start changing small things first. The way you speak, the way you explain yourself, the way you laugh when something does not feel funny, the way you stay quiet when your spirit wants to leave. You begin giving people access to parts of you they did not earn, just because the room made you feel chosen for a moment. Then one day, you come home tired in a way sleep does not fix. You sit there checking your phone, replaying what was said, wondering why you feel smaller after being around people who claimed to value you. That is when you have to ask yourself a harder question. What if the danger was never the moment itself? What if the danger was the environment, the place, the circle, the system of silent rules you kept obeying without realizing it? The door you opened did not destroy you all at once. It simply trained you to ignore yourself slowly. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable about human nature. People do not always show you their motives directly. Rooms have politics, friendships have hidden balances, families have unspoken roles, workplaces have invisible games. Even love, when it is handled by the wrong person, can become a territory where your weakness is mapped before your heart is protected. And if you enter every place with an open soul, believing everyone is as sincere as you try to be, you will keep getting surprised by patterns you should have studied. This does not mean you become cold. It means you stop being careless with your presence. Because every place shapes you. Every repeated environment leaves fingerprints on your mind. Spend enough time around chaos and peace starts to feel boring. Spend enough time around people who mock sincerity and you start hiding your depth. Spend enough time in places where approval is given and taken like a weapon, and you begin measuring your worth by the temperature of other people's attention. And the painful part is this. Sometimes you knew. Deep down you knew. You felt the shift in your body. You noticed how your discipline weakened after being there. You noticed how your self-respect became negotiable. You noticed how you started explaining behavior you would have warned someone else to leave. But you stayed because leaving would have forced you to admit that the thing you wanted to be safe was never safe for you. That admission hurts. It hurts because you remember how hopeful you were when you first opened that door. You remember the version of you that believed this might be different. You do not want to feel embarrassed for trusting. You do not want to accept that your hunger for belonging made you ignore the cost. But there is no shame in realizing late. The real damage begins when you realize and still keep walking back in. So maybe the first act of discipline is not waking up earlier, not training harder, not becoming more productive. Maybe the first act of discipline is noticing what changes you when you enter it. Noticing who makes you abandon your center. Noticing which rooms require you to shrink, perform, chase, defend, or betray your own calm just to remain accepted. You are not meant to enter every open door. Some doors are tests of your loneliness. Some are traps dressed as opportunities. Some are old versions of your life asking if they still have permission to control you. And when you finally understand that, you stop mistaking access for blessing. You stop calling every invitation a chance. You stop confusing being wanted with being safe. The moment you pause before entering, something in you returns. Not dramatically, quietly. Like a person finally standing at the threshold of their own life and realizing that peace is not found by walking into every room that calls your name. Sometimes peace begins when you look at the door, feel the old pull, and choose not to open it again. You can feel it the moment you enter the room. The air changes. Your shoulders tighten. Your face adjusts before your heart does. Suddenly, you are not just standing there as yourself anymore. You are measuring your words, controlling your expression, deciding which version of you will be safest to show. You smile at the right time. You laugh a little longer than you want to. You act less tired than you are. You hide the part of you that feels confused, drained, unfinished. Because in that room, honesty feels too expensive. And the worst part is, nobody has to tell you to perform. You just know. You know which people only respect confidence when it looks polished. You know which circles punish silence by calling it weakness. You know which environments make you feel like every mistake will be remembered, every insecurity will be studied, every soft part of you will be used as proof that you are not enough. So you start editing yourself, quietly, repeatedly, until one day you come home and realize you have spent hours around people, but none of them actually met you. They met your presentation. That is a lonely kind of exhaustion. It is not the tiredness that comes from working hard. It is the tiredness that comes from pretending to be untouched, while something inside you is asking to be seen. You check your phone afterward, replaying the conversation, wondering if you said too much, said too little, looked awkward, sounded weak, seemed behind, seemed ordinary. You are not resting. You are still in the room mentally, still performing for people who are no longer even looking at you. This is where many people start losing themselves, not in some dramatic collapse, not in one obvious betrayal, but in the slow habit of becoming acceptable. Machiavelli understood that appearances shape the way people judge, reward, fear, follow, and dismiss. He knew that in many spaces, truth does not rule first. Image does. Presentation does. The person who looks composed is assumed to be strong. The person who speaks with certainty is assumed to be right. The person who performs success well enough is treated as if they have earned authority. And if you are not careful, you begin building your life around being perceived correctly instead of living honestly. That is the trap. At first, you tell yourself you are just adapting. You are being mature. You are learning how the world works. But slowly, adaptation becomes self-abandonment. You stop saying what you really think because you do not want to disturb the mood. You stop sharing what hurts because you do not want to look needy. You stop admitting that you are struggling because everyone else seems so perfectly put together. You start confusing emotional control with emotional hiding. And deep down, you know the difference. There is a version of silence that protects your peace, and there is a version of silence that buries your truth alive. There is a kind of discipline that makes you stronger, and there is a kind of performance that makes you invisible to yourself. You may fool the room. You may impress the people. You may leave with approval, attention, even respect. But if you had to abandon your own center to receive it, something was taken from you, not loudly, quietly. The real danger of the performing room is that it rewards you for becoming less real. It teaches you to treat your image like a survival tool. It makes you believe that being admired is safer than being understood. But admiration is thin when it is built on a mask. It cannot comfort you at night. It cannot hold you when your routines break, when your mind is heavy, when you're sitting alone with the truth you kept hiding from everyone else. So the shift begins when you stop asking, "How do I look in this room?" and start asking, "What is this room doing to me?" Does it make you sharper, calmer, more honest? Or does it make you anxious, competitive, performative, secretly bitter? Do you leave with more self-respect, or do you leave feeling like you auditioned for a place you are not even sure you want to belong? You do not have to become rude. You do not have to explain your withdrawal. You simply begin saving your real self for places that do not require constant acting. You begin choosing rooms where your nervous system does not have to prepare for judgment before you even speak. You begin understanding that not every audience deserves access to your inner life, and one day you stop performing so naturally that the wrong rooms start feeling unbearable. That is not weakness. That is your soul refusing to keep paying the price of applause. The hardest table to leave is the one where you once felt loved, not respected, not protected, not truly understood. Loved, maybe, in the old way, in the familiar way, in the way that makes you doubt your own pain because there were good moments mixed inside the damage. That is what makes it confusing. If someone was always cruel, you would know what to do. But when the same people who drain you also carry pieces of your history, your laughter, your childhood, your loyalty, your old dreams, walking away feels less like freedom and more like betrayal. So you stay seated. You stay even when every conversation feels like a small negotiation with your dignity. You stay when your boundaries are treated like an attitude problem. You stay when they remind you of what they did for you, how long they have known you, how much you owe them, how selfish you seem now that you are trying to change. And because you are not heartless, because you remember the past, because you do not want to become the person who abandons people, you keep giving access to those who have learned how to make your kindness serve them. That is the quiet danger of the wrong table. It does not always look like hatred. Sometimes it looks like family pressure. Sometimes it sounds like old friends saying you have changed. Sometimes it wears the face of someone who helped you once, and now uses that help like a chain around your throat. They do not need to shout. They only need to remind you who you used to be. They only need to make you feel guilty for wanting peace they never gave you. And slowly, loyalty stops being love. It becomes a role. You become the one who understands, the one who forgives, the one who comes back, the one who explains carefully so nobody feels attacked, the one who swallows disrespect because everyone else is just like that. You begin managing the emotions of people who never learned to manage their own, and somehow they still call you difficult when you finally get tired. Machiavelli would not be surprised by this. He understood that people often protect their advantage before they protect your peace, not because every person is evil, but because many people become comfortable with the version of you that benefits them. They may love you, but they may also love your availability. They may value you, but they may also value how easily you bend. They may call it loyalty, but what they really mean is access without consequence. That truth hurts because it forces you to look at your own part. You were not weak. You were trying to be good. You were trying not to become bitter. You were trying to prove that you could stay soft in a world that kept giving you reasons to harden. But somewhere along the way, you confused patience with permission. You thought being loyal meant enduring everything quietly. You thought leaving the table meant you had failed the relationship, when maybe the relationship had been failing you for a long time. And there comes a moment when your body knows before your mouth does. You sit there listening to the same tone, the same guilt, the same subtle dismissal, and something inside you no longer moves toward repair. It does not want to argue. It does not want to prove. It does not want to explain one more time why basic respect should not feel like a request. It simply gets quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understand that some people only invite you to the table to keep you in your assigned seat. That is where self-respect begins to separate itself from guilt. You stop measuring your goodness by how much mistreatment you can absorb. You stop letting history overrule reality. You stop calling it loyalty when you are the only one sacrificing peace to keep the connection alive. You begin to see that a real bond does not require you to shrink every time you sit down. It does not punish you for growing. It does not turn your healing into an insult. You may still love them. That is the part nobody talks about. You can love people and still stop giving them the power to exhaust you. You can remember what they meant to you and still admit what they are doing to you now. You can be grateful for the past without letting it own your future. One day you will leave that table without making a scene. No dramatic speech. No final performance of pain. You will simply stop showing up where your spirit has to bleed quietly to be accepted. And that will be the moment you understand. Loyalty without boundaries is not devotion. It is disappearance. The crowd does not need to touch you to control you. It only needs to make you react. One comment, one rumor, one cold look, one message left hanging long enough to make your chest tighten. Suddenly your peace is gone, not because your life changed, but because someone outside of you pulled a string you did not know was still attached. You tell yourself you are above it, that you do not care, that their opinion means nothing. But then you catch yourself checking again, reading again, replaying the tone, preparing an explanation in your head for people who already decided how they wanted to see you. That is how the crowd enters your nervous system. It makes you defend your name in rooms where your truth was never welcome. It makes you prove your intentions to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. It makes you stand in front of invisible judges, exhausted, over-explaining, trying to be seen as fair, good, loyal, honest, harmless. And the more you explain, the more they learn where your wounds are. They learn what accusation makes you panic. They learn what silence makes you chase. They learn what version of rejection makes you lose your center. And once they learn that, they do not need power over your life. They only need access to your reaction. This is one of the most dangerous places you can enter, because it looks like communication at first. You think you are clearing your name. You think you are correcting the story. You think you are standing up for yourself. But sometimes what you are really doing is feeding the same fire that was lit to watch you burn emotionally. Some people do not want understanding. They want movement. They want to see if you will still jump when your pride is touched. They want to know if your peace can still be purchased with disrespect. Machiavelli understood the danger of public perception. He knew that people are often moved less by truth and more by what appears believable. A crowd can be guided by image, noise, fear, and repetition. And when you react too quickly, you become easier to place inside someone else's story. Your anger becomes their evidence. Your frustration becomes their entertainment. Your need to be understood becomes the leash they use to keep pulling you back. That is the uncomfortable truth. Not every battle is asking for your voice. Some battles are designed to drain it. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Some accusations are thrown because the person knows you will abandon your calm to answer them. Not every misunderstanding is innocent. Some people misunderstand you because the false version gives them more control than the real one. And you know this because of how you feel afterward. You do not feel free. You feel emptied. You come home tired, still carrying people who are not in the room. You try to rest, but your mind keeps drafting responses. You try to focus, but part of you is still arguing with someone who may never care about the truth. Your body is present, but your attention has been stolen. That is the cost nobody sees. Reaction does not only take a moment, it can take your whole evening, your sleep, your discipline, your appetite for your own life. So the shift begins quietly. You stop treating every noise like a summons. You stop handing your emotional state to people who have not earned the responsibility of affecting you. You let a message sit unanswered. You let a false story exist without rushing to bleed yourself open beside it. You let someone think what they think, not because it does not hurt, but because you finally understand that your peace is more valuable than being accurately understood by the wrong crowd. This is not weakness. This is restraint. There is a silence that comes from fear, and there is a silence that comes from command. At first, it may shake inside you. Your fingers may want to type, your chest may burn with the need to correct them. Your mind may beg for one final explanation. But if you stay still long enough, something settles. You begin to feel the old hook lose its grip. You realize you do not have to answer every version of yourself that others invent. You are allowed to become unavailable to chaos. And when the crowd can no longer feed on your reaction, it loses interest in your disturbance. The same voices that once pulled you into panic begin to sound distant. Not because they became quiet, but because you stopped building your identity around their noise. That is when you understand the real warning. A dangerous crowd does not destroy you by hating you. It destroys you by making you forget that your attention was yours to protect. The most dangerous cage does not always feel like a cage at first. Sometimes it feels like rest. Like one more hour in bed. One more night avoiding the thing you promised yourself you would face. One more scroll. One more excuse. One more soft escape from the pressure of becoming honest with your own life. Nobody is forcing you. Nobody is standing over you. That is what makes it so dangerous. You can stay there and still convince yourself you are recovering. But deep down, you know the difference between rest and hiding. Rest gives something back to you. Hiding takes something away and calls it peace. It leaves you with that strange heaviness at night, when the room is quiet and your mind starts counting all the things you avoided, the message you did not send, the routine you broke again, the money you said you would save but spent trying to feel better for a moment. The body you said you would train, the skill you said you would begin, when life finally felt easier. And life keeps not feeling easier. So you keep waiting. You tell yourself you just need the right mood, the right energy, the right season, the right sign. But slowly, comfort starts making decisions for you. It chooses what you eat, what you postpone, what you tolerate, what you stop expecting from yourself. It tells you that discipline is too heavy, that effort can wait, that tomorrow will be different without asking anything from today. And because the cage is soft, you do not notice how small your world is becoming. That is the trap. Not pain, not failure, not rejection. Comfort. The kind of comfort that protects you from discomfort while quietly stealing your self-respect. The kind that lets you avoid the embarrassment of trying, but also keeps you from earning the quiet pride that only effort gives. You may look calm on the outside, but inside there is a silent argument happening. One part of you wants ease. Another part of you is tired of being managed by your own weakness. You are not lazy in your soul. You are just worn down, distracted, and used to choosing what numbs you faster than what rebuilds you slowly. Machiavelli warned in his own way that fortune does not favor the unprepared. Life changes without asking for permission. People leave, opportunities close, pressure arrives, and when you have spent too long inside comfort, even small storms feel like punishment. Not because you are incapable, but because you allowed your inner structure to weaken. You stopped sharpening the parts of yourself that would have carried you through. This is the uncomfortable truth you may not want to hear. Your comfort zone is not always a place where you feel good. Sometimes it is just the place where nothing asks you to grow. It is familiar sadness, familiar excuses, familiar disappointment. It is the same cycle repeated until the pain becomes predictable enough to live with. And a predictable prison can start to feel safer than an unknown road. But something in you is still awake. That is why the regret hurts. That is why broken routines bother you. That is why you feel irritated when you see someone else doing what you keep postponing. It is not jealousy. It is recognition. Some part of you is watching from beneath the noise, asking why you keep choosing a smaller life when you know there is another version of you waiting behind discomfort. The shift begins when you stop trying to feel ready. You get up while your mind is still negotiating. You clean the room even when nobody notices. You save a little money even when it feels meaningless. You train your body while your confidence is still missing. You work in private without needing applause, not because it feels dramatic, but because you are done letting comfort speak louder than your future. At first, it will feel awkward. Your old habits will call you back like they have authority. The bed will feel warmer. The phone will feel easier. The excuse will feel reasonable. But each time you choose the harder thing quietly, a small part of your self-respect returns. Not all at once, not loudly, just enough for you to remember that you are not trapped by the life you repeated yesterday. And then comfort changes meaning. It stops being the place where you disappear from your own responsibilities. It becomes the peace you earn after you have kept your word to yourself. The silence after honest effort. The calm after a day you did not betray yourself. That is when you realize the cage was never locked. It was just comfortable enough to make you stop reaching for the door. The most painful place you keep returning to may not be a room at all. It may be a memory, a sentence someone said when you were already tired, a look that made you feel replaceable, a betrayal that happened years ago but still knows how to find you at night. You can be sitting in a quiet room, living in the present, with nothing happening around you, and suddenly your mind opens that old door again. There you are, back inside the moment, back inside the humiliation, back inside the silence after you were left waiting, back inside the version of yourself that did not know how to respond. And because it lives inside you, nobody sees how often you visit it. People think you moved on because you stopped talking about it. They think you healed because you learned how to function. You go through your day, answer messages, handle your work, laugh when you need to, keep your face steady. But some nights, when everything gets quiet, that old mirror appears again. It does not show who you are now. It only shows the wound. It shows the person who was rejected, embarrassed, abandoned, underestimated, replaced. And if you stare long enough, you begin to forget there is more to you than what happened. That is the danger. Pain does not always destroy you by staying painful. Sometimes it becomes familiar. It becomes the place your mind returns to when life feels uncertain. It gives you a strange identity. You start explaining yourself through what they did. You start expecting every new person to carry the same blade. You hear a delay in someone's reply and your body remembers being ignored. You see someone pull away and your mind prepares for the old ending. Before anything real has happened, the past has already entered the room and started speaking for you. And you may not notice how much power it still has. You call it being careful. You call it having trust issues. You call it protecting yourself. But deep down, part of you knows that protection can become another prison. You are not just avoiding pain. You are avoiding the version of life where pain no longer gets to lead. Because healing would mean stepping away from the mirror that has defined you for so long. It would mean admitting that the wound was real, but it is not allowed to remain your master. Machiavelli understood that whoever can predict your reaction has influence over you. And old wounds make you predictable. They teach people where to press. They teach situations how to shake you. If rejection still owns your nervous system, anyone who withdraws attention can control your mood. If humiliation still owns your self-image, any small criticism can send you into defense. If betrayal still owns your heart, every connection will feel like a negotiation with danger. This is not because you are broken. It is because part of you is still standing where the pain first left you. But there comes a moment when you get tired of meeting yourself only through damage. You get tired of being the person who replays the same scene, hoping one day it will hurt differently. You get tired of giving the past a chair in every decision. You begin to realize that memory is not always truth. Sometimes memory is fear wearing the face of evidence. Sometimes it shows you what happened but hides what survived. And you did survive, not perfectly, not cleanly, not without scars. But you are still here. And that has to mean something more than simply enduring. It means there is a part of you that was never fully taken, even when you felt reduced to nothing. A part that kept breathing. A part that kept observing. A part that kept waiting for the day you would stop kneeling in front of the same mirror, asking it to tell you who you are. So the shift begins quietly. You stop reopening the wound just to prove it existed. You stop building your future around people who are no longer standing in front of you. You stop treating every new silence like an old abandonment. You let the memory come, but you do not move into it. You feel the ache, but you do not hand it the keys. You remind yourself that what happened may explain your fear, but it does not deserve authority over your whole life. This is where self-command begins. Not by pretending you were never hurt, not by forcing yourself to forget, but by refusing to let one chapter become your permanent address. The past can visit, it can speak. It can leave a shadow across the room, but it no longer gets to choose your posture, your tone, your discipline, your love, your courage, or your peace. One day you will look into that same mirror and notice something different. The wound will still be there, but it will not be the only thing reflected back. You will see the person who walked out of the memory and finally returned to their own life. There is a kind of anger that feels like control at first. It makes your chest feel awake. It gives you something to hold when everything else feels taken. After being ignored, used, replaced, underestimated, or made to feel small, anger can feel cleaner than grief. It does not ask you to admit how deeply you were hurt. It does not make you sit with the embarrassment of caring too much. It gives you a throne to sit on inside your own mind, where you can imagine the day they finally understand, the day they regret it, the day they see you standing higher than the version of you they left behind, and for a while that fantasy feels like medicine. You start building silent conversations in your head. You picture yourself answering differently. You imagine them watching your success, feeling the absence of your attention, realizing too late what they lost. You tell yourself this is motivation. You tell yourself this is discipline. You tell yourself you are just proving a point. But slowly, the point becomes a chain. Their face keeps appearing in your private moments. Their voice starts living inside your effort. Even your progress begins to orbit around the person who wounded you. That is when power becomes another place you were never meant to stay. Because if your growth still needs their regret to feel complete, they are still sitting somewhere inside your life. If your peace depends on being seen winning, you have not left the battlefield. You have only changed your position on it. And that is a hard thing to admit, because revenge can disguise itself as self-respect. It can wear the language of standards, boundaries, ambition, silence. But underneath, it may still be asking the same desperate question. Do you see me now? That question will exhaust you. Machiavelli understood that power without control becomes exposure. The person who cannot govern their own anger becomes easy to guide. Touch their pride, and they move. Threaten their image, and they react. Deny them recognition, and they begin performing. A person may look strong from the outside, but if resentment chooses their direction, they are not ruling themselves. They are being ruled by the wound they refuse to release. And you know what that feels like. You know the feeling of lying awake not because you miss someone, but because you want them to understand the damage they caused. You know the quiet bitterness that enters your routine when your effort is fueled by proving someone wrong. You may train harder, work longer, stay silent, save money, rebuild in private, and still feel no peace because the goal was never truly your own. It was a message, a performance without an audience, a life still shaped by the person you claim no longer matters. That realization can sting, because part of you wanted your pain to mean something. Part of you wanted the unfairness corrected. Part of you wanted life to bring them a moment where they finally felt what you felt. But the uncomfortable truth is that waiting for someone else's awakening can become another form of captivity. You keep your spirit near the scene of the injury, hoping justice will arrive with their regret. But there is a quieter strength waiting beyond that. It begins when you stop needing your healing to punish anyone, when you stop using your future as a weapon, when your silence is no longer designed to make them wonder, but to give your nervous system room to breathe. When your discipline is not built to make someone jealous, but to make your own life less chaotic, less dependent, less easily shaken. This is where anger starts losing its throne. Not because you became soft, because you became harder to move. You no longer need to win every invisible argument. You no longer rehearse speeches for people who only hear what protects their ego. You no longer mistake being feared, envied, or missed for being free. Something inside you steps down from the cold seat of resentment and chooses a different kind of authority. The kind that does not announce itself. You work because your life needs your hands. You rest because your body is not a machine for revenge. You choose peace over drama, not because drama could not be answered, but because answering it would drag you back into a version of yourself you are trying to outgrow. And one day you realize they may never understand. They may never apologize. They may never see the full weight of what they did. They may go on believing their version. And somehow, your life still belongs to you. That is real control. Not making them suffer. Not making them watch, not proving that you are worth more than they saw. Real control is the moment their memory no longer gets to decide the temperature of your soul. There comes a moment when the noise no longer feels worth entering. Not because you have become distant from life, but because you have finally become honest about what certain places do to you. You remember the rooms that made you perform, the people who called your exhaustion loyalty, the crowds that fed on your reaction, the comfort that kept you numb, the old wounds that kept asking you to return, the anger that promised control, while quietly keeping you tied to what hurt you. And after all of that, something in you gets tired in a different way. Not tired like defeat, tired like clarity. You stop wanting to explain why you need peace. You stop trying to make dangerous places understand why you are leaving. You stop standing at doors that have already shown you what they cost. There is no dramatic announcement inside you anymore. No need to prove that you've changed. No need to make the past watch you walk away. You simply begin to feel the quiet pull of a different ground beneath your feet. A place where you do not have to shrink. A place where your nervous system is not always preparing for the next insult, the next demand, the next misunderstanding, the next emotional trap. For the first time in a long time, you start asking what kind of life would actually allow you to breathe. Not what looks impressive, not what keeps everyone comfortable, not what gives you the illusion of being wanted, but what lets you wake up without already feeling borrowed by other people's chaos. That question changes everything. Because once you have entered enough dangerous places, you learn that peace is not weakness. Peace is intelligence. It is the mind finally refusing to waste itself on battles that only feed emptiness. It is the body telling the truth before pride can argue. It is the quiet discipline of choosing where your attention goes, who receives your softness, what earns your time, and which doors no longer deserve your hand on the handle. You begin to understand that not every closed door is a loss. Some doors close because your older self has no business living there anymore. Some invitations stop feeling exciting because your soul knows the price before your mind tries to negotiate it. Some people can only reach the version of you that needed approval more than peace. And when that version begins to fade, they may call you cold. They may say you changed. They may act confused when their old access no longer works. Let them be confused. You are not rebuilding yourself to remain understandable to the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You are choosing solitude because you hate people. You are choosing it because you finally need a place where your thoughts can return to their own voice. You need mornings that are not poisoned by last night's drama. You need evenings where your phone does not decide your mood. You need routines that restore your dignity instead of distracting you from your disappointment. So you start small. You keep your room cleaner. You answer slower. You stop volunteering your pain to people who only collect details. You save your energy for work that actually belongs to you. You train your body not to impress anyone, but because carrying yourself well begins to feel like respect. You let silence become a home, not a punishment. You return to yourself quietly, without needing the world to clap for a private decision. And it will feel strange at first. Peace can feel unfamiliar when chaos has been your identity. Calm can feel empty when you are used to proving your worth through struggle. You may even miss the places that hurt you, not because they were good, but because they were known. That is where you must be gentle with yourself and still remain firm. Missing a door does not mean you should open it again. The ground you belong on will not always be loud. It may not impress anyone. It may look like choosing sleep over an argument. Saving money instead of buying temporary relief. Working in silence while nobody knows how hard you are trying. Walking away from a conversation before your pride takes over. Refusing to return to the table where your spirit had to beg for respect. This is where you become harder to misuse. Not because you became cruel, because you became awake. You learned that your presence is not common. Your attention is not cheap. Your peace is not something to gamble away for acceptance, nostalgia, comfort, or revenge. And one day you will look back at the places you once kept entering and feel no need to hate them. You will simply understand why you had to leave. That is the quiet ground where you finally belong. Not a place that saves you from pain, but a life where you no longer abandon yourself just to stand somewhere you were never meant to stay. And if something in this video felt uncomfortably familiar, do not rush past that feeling. Sit with it. Maybe there is a door you already know you should stop opening. Maybe there is a room, a person, a crowd, a memory, or an old version of your life that keeps asking for access to the peace you are trying to rebuild. If this message met you at the right time, like the video so it can reach someone else who is quietly trying to leave the places that changed them. Comment the word threshold if you are choosing to stop returning where your spirit has to shrink. And subscribe if this is the kind of channel you need beside you while you rebuild in silence. Protect your attention, strengthen your discipline, and become someone who no longer mistakes every invitation for a place they are meant to stay.